So you've built a cool app and it's running in production. You might consider the job done, but what about monitoring its behavior? Introduce cAdvisor, Prometheus and Grafana. cAdvisor exposes hardware metrics such as CPU and memory usage. Prometheus is a monitoring tool that will aggregate the metrics from cAdvisor as time series data for Grafana to visualize. Finally, we will create our own custom metrics to better understand our application's behavior. This two-part series will add monitoring to a simple Node server. The server is adapted from a previous video I made. We will build a dashboard in Grafana to track uptime, memory, and CPU usage, as well as coin flips per minute and the rate at which we get heads or tails. If you followed along in the previous tutorial, you should have something like this, where it's just a single file and we defined a couple endpoints to flip coins, and the server listens at import 5000. To test it out one more time, let's do node server.js. Should work. Now if you come over here to your browser window and you just go to localhost 5000 / flip-coins and then specify the number of times, let's say it's 10. That first one was crazy, 1 and 9, but yeah, you can see it's reliably around 50-50 split for each. Now let's delete some stuff in this file just to make the code slightly simpler. So I'm going to remove the normal endpoint, the slash, and I'm going to remove flipcoin just because this tutorial is just for monitoring and don't really need all that. So now I'm going to do npm init. The reason why is because we want to throw this into a Docker container, and you need a package JSON. Just makes life easier because it keeps all the dependencies in one place and whatnot. So I ran npm init and I just hit enter. I didn't even specify anything. Now, if you see in the package JSON, we have a name, and then we have one dependency, which is express. Awesome. Now I'm going to make a Dockerfile, and this Dockerfile is going to build and run our container to do the coin flip. So let's just do node alpine. The work directory I'm going to specify is this coin API, and then it's time to copy package JSON, and then we'll do the same thing for package lock. Oops. All right, so just same line, but just package -lock. Okay, now we'll just do npm install, so the container has all the dependencies, which is just express for now. And then after that's done, we'll copy our server, not main.js, server, into the container, and then we'll expose the port that we want to listen on, which is, you guessed it, 5000. And then finally we'll run our command, which is just node, and then we can just do server.js. Awesome. So this looks good. I'm going to go a step further. Because we're going to be messing around with cAdvisor, Prometheus, and Grafana, we're going to want to throw all of those into a docker-compose.yml. Reason being so that when we set up our monitoring, it's all provisioned with one command, which will just be docker-compose up. So in my docker-compose YAML file, I'll just define the coin flip API, specifying version 2 for no particular reason. It doesn't really matter for what we're doing. Now it's time to define our services. So coin API, I'll give it the same name, coin API. Specify the build context, so we'll just say the context is the same directory as the YAML file, and the Docker file can be found at oops, fix that. Get rid of the first Docker file. There you go. And then two more things. We're going to specify the ports. So this is 5000 mapping to 5000 from the host machine, my computer, to the container. And then our restart policy, which will just be on failure. So if for some reason it breaks, the container will automatically restart. We won't have to start everything over again. Okay, with the service defined, our Docker file made, let's just do docker compose up. If you're running it for the first time, you'll see the build steps like copying, npm install, and whatnot. And now if we go back to localhost, you can see it works the same. I'm getting, I'm refreshing the page and I'm getting the results here as JSON. I can flip it 1,000 times. I can flip it 100,000 times, and it works. The next thing is we're going to define our cAdvisor service in the Docker-compose YAML file. cAdvisor does things like gather metrics on containers such as CPU usage, memory usage, and so much more that I'm not going to cover, but it's a really great tool to use when you're trying to add monitoring to your applications. So I'm going to start with just defining another service, so cAdvisor, and the image is, you're going to find this at gcr.io/cAdvisor/cAdvisor:\latest. Following that, we're going to just define the container name, which is cAdvisor. Our restart policy will be always. All right, now here's where we're going to map a bunch of volumes. Now all these things are volumes that cAdvisor needs to, grab all your metrics. So first thing is the local time in etc or etc. Local time, we're just going to map it to the same thing. So we'll just say local time like so. You can say RO, which just specifies read only. We're going to do the same thing again, but for now time zone. So you can see I just copied that line above and I changed it to time zone. Next is I'll let it read the root of my file system. We'll just say root. We'll map it to root fs. We'll say read only. Next, just keep track of stuff that's running. So var run, var run. We can make that read write. What's next? We'll give it access to the sys directory found at root. That doesn't have to be read write. That can be read only. Next, we need to give it access to Docker. So we'll do var lib Docker, map it to the same thing. So var lib Docker, and you can specify read only. Next thing is we're going to give it access to devices. So by doing so, we're going to give it access to kernel messages. So dev and then kmsg, like that. Kernel messages, and then we'll say it depends on coin. What do we call it? We called it coin API. There you go. Defined cAdvisor. So now your Docker Compose YAML file should look something like this. All right, with cAdvisor defined, let's go ahead and define Prometheus now in our Docker Compose YAML file. So again, in the services, we're going to say Prometheus, and then image is the same thing, but first prom and then / Prometheus, and just say latest. The container name, we'll just give it the same name, Prometheus. Restart policy, always volumes. Let's map the same three. So we're going to map the local time volumes. And then the next thing we're going to map is a config file. But we haven't defined the config file yet. So let's go ahead and take a break from doing Docker Compose stuff and make a config file. So on the left side, I'm creating a new directory called Prometheus. And inside, I'm going to make a Prometheus.yml, like so. And in this YAML file, we're going to define things that we want to scrape from. So first, we're going to do global. This is for global configuration across all the things you want to grab metrics from. We'll make the scrape interval 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, it's going to go around and grab metrics from the locations that we define in this section. So scrape configs, just one for now. We'll make it cAdvisor. So job name is cAdvisor. Static configs, which is going to say where to listen to. So the target, and it's an array. So then we're going to just do cAdvisor, then port 8080. Now notice in Docker Compose, I didn't specify a port to open. We won't be able to access cAdvisor from the host machine, but from within the Docker Compose, all the containers running at the same time, this will be able to get cAdvisor metrics on port 8080. All right, so now we'll go back here to our docker-compose.yml file, and we're going to map another volume, which is going to be /Prometheus / Prometheus.yml into etc, and then like so. So left side is the host machine and right side is the target machine. Then we have to specify a command. And this is just going to tell, like when we run Prometheus, to use that config file that we defined. So it's just going to be --config-file equals, and then at the beginning of this, etc / like so. And this time we are going to expose some ports because we're going to play around with the console that it has on port 9090. So run it like so, and we should be good. So your Docker compose YAML file should look something like this now. And your Prometheus.yml file should look something like this. Now that we've defined Prometheus and cAdvisor, let's go ahead and do docker compose up. Let's go ahead and start it all. You can see we're getting a bunch of logs from Prometheus, so it looks like it's running. Go to a new tab. Let's go to that port that we forwarded, so 9090. And what do we get here? Interactive Prometheus terminal, and you even get to do dark theme. Pretty cool. So if we use this text input here, we can query for metrics on our container. So let's start with container memory usage. Now you can see we get a bunch of random stuff. It's like so many metrics on just random things. You can go to graph, go by maybe 30 minutes. Ignore this cluster here. I was doing some testing, but what it's important to know, like right here. So we'll go back a little more. Let's go the last 5 minutes. So you can see these are all the running instances of just random stuff. But let's narrow it down to our coin API. So what we can do here is, if you look in the list of things, list of containers running things that we're scraping metrics from, you can find one by the name of coin API. So if I do open brackets and I specify name as coin API in quotes, if I specify the name in these brackets being coin API, we get a single line, and it's the memory usage in bytes. It's just a line. You can see it kind of spiked, I guess, when it started. So let's do a big coin flip query. So let's say I want to flip the coin 100 million times. So hit enter. This is going to take a minute. How many times was this? 1, 2, 3, so 1,000. 1, 2, 3 million. Yeah, 100 million times. So if you can see the tab, it's still spinning, so it's taking quite a while. Just got the result, and again, it's around 50%. Let's execute it. It looks the same. But now let's check the CPU usage. So usage. Yeah, you can see that it spiked. And if you're wondering why there are 4 lines here, I think it's because the container has 4 CPUs, virtual or whatever. You can tell because, see how on this CPU 1, CPU 2, or whatever. So I think you can do CPU equals and then CPU 00. Oops. Execute. Yeah, so now it's just one line. So you can get pretty granular with these searches. But yeah, it's cool to see this. Say you have a coin flip as a service, and now you've just set up monitoring, and you see the line spikes. Like, oh my gosh, the CPU is going crazy. We need more resources. So it's cool to explore these metrics, and now we can take it a step further with Grafana. All right, let's go ahead and define our Grafana service in the Docker compose YAML file. So I'm going to come down here to this section after Prometheus, and I'm just going to say Grafana image. What are we going to do? Grafana / Grafana. Nope, not failure. Grafana and then latest. You can kind of see the pattern that we're doing for each of these monitoring services and their images. Container name, let's just call it Grafana. Restart. We could just say always. Now it's time that we map our volumes. So the first 2 volumes are going to be, you guessed it, the first 2 from the last one. Moving on, we're going to map some files that we're going to define on our own. So we're going to make a Grafana directory. So Grafana, we're going to say grafana.ini, and we'll map that to etc. This is in the container, Grafana, and then grafana.ini. Now, what is this file? So let's go ahead and define that real quick. So I'm going to make a folder called Grafana, and then inside we'll make a grafana.ini file. I'll just put this over here to the right so we can see what the left side, the Docker Compose, and we'll check the right side. So inside of Grafana ini, we don't have to put too much, just a couple sections. So first, paths, provisioning. This is going to make sense in a bit. So a lot of the configuration for Grafana is in a directory called provisioning, and we're going to make that directory coming up soon. But for now, we're just going to say, hey, when you run, reference the provisioning directory that we define on our own. Next is dashboards. I'm going to leave this empty for now, but we're going to define a default dashboard which you land on when you first visit Grafana. Next, as far as authentication goes, you can make Grafana password protected, anonymous. So what this is going to do is we're going to just say that, because it's just for learning right now, I'm going to say that, anyone can come and visit the dashboard. And if you are going to visit the dashboard, your role is admin. Now, if you're doing this for like the real deal, like you're trying to expose this and make it password protected, don't do this. But this is just for learning. So, all right, grafana.ini is done. Now, we mapped it here in the Docker Compose file. So now the next thing is, let's map the provisioning directory. So grafana/provisioning. And we're going to map that to etc. Same thing. Okay, and then one more thing I'm going to map, which I haven't defined yet, and I also haven't defined the thing above. We're going to get to that. Grafana, making a data directory so that Grafana can store data. I'm going to do var lib Grafana. Awesome. Okay. User, I'm going to just say is 1000. This is just like for configuration stuff, so it runs. Depends on, let's just say Prometheus, because it does. It's going to be grabbing data from Prometheus. And we're going to map ports. And those ports we're going to map are just 3000, like so. All right, cool. So now it's done. Let's go ahead and make those directories that we need to map to. So make a provisioning directory. Provisioning. I'm pretty sure I spelled that right. Now inside of provisioning, we're going to define two more directories. So one's called dashboards, and then the other one is called data sources. All right, so you see inside of provisioning, we have two directories. They're not within each other. They're at the same level, dashboards and data sources. So I'm going to start with data sources. And inside of data sources, I'm going to create a YAML file called all. So all.yml. And now on the right side, all.yml is going to be real simple. It's just API version, say 1. And then we specify our data sources. Where are we getting our data from, if you can think? Just 1 second before I type it. It is, you guessed it, Prometheus. And I'm going to just give it the name Prometheus. The type is Prometheus. Grafana already knows like the type. It knows how to interact with Prometheus. Access, we'll just say proxy. And then the URL is HTTP Prometheus. You're like, why is it not like, something.com, something dot whatever? This is because it's within the Docker container. And if you're using Docker Compose, the kind of DNS thing gets resolved to that container for you. You don't have to do much. It's pretty nice. Okay, so this is our data sources. Maybe if I actually typed 1 up here, that would be good. So, looks good. Now, we're going to go into dashboards, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make another file called all.yml. And what goes inside of all.yml? So this is the same thing. API version, is 1. Now we start with a section called providers. And you get a name. So we're gonna say name is Grafana org ID. We'll just say 1. Folder services. You'll see this as we go into the actual dashboard when we run everything. So type. We'll say file. Options. Now the path. This is important. This specifies like all the provisioning stuff that we defined. Remember right here we're mapping it to etc Grafana provisioning. So grab this path. What are we doing? Grafana provisioning dashboards. This path is like so that say we have multiple dashboards that you want to click from. If you're on Grafana, you can like click on the different views. We only have one, but it's going to help us. So, all right, we saved it. So your left side should look like provisioning. Inside of Grafana, you should have an INI file. The INI file should look like this for now. You go to dashboards. There's and data sources inside of provisioning, and each directory has an all. This is the dashboards all. You can see the path right here. This is what I have. Data sources all. This is what I have. Okay, and then one more thing, which is the last line here, which is line 48. I'm going to make a data directory, data, and it looks like this is running from earlier, so stop it real quick. All right, now I'm going to do Docker compose up. This should start all of the services. Looks like it's listening on the port. This plugins directory, this error doesn't really matter, so let's go ahead to localhost 3000. Let's see what we get. So localhost 3000. There's Grafana. Here it is. So if you go to, you can create a new dashboard on this left side. This is, you can explore this. Plenty of stuff to read here. Check out, tutorials or whatever. Go dashboard. So now I'm in my new dashboard. You can name it. See how there's a services folder? That's from what we defined in that file. So let's go create a dashboard. Let's add a new panel. Yeah, so this is the initial, dashboard view. I'm going to start with having a metric that tracks the same thing that we're doing here. So let's just grab this metric here, the container CPU, total, copy it. We'll go, the data source is Prometheus. Paste this in here. And you'll see that these are the lines. They're the same lines that we saw over here. It's 4 different CPUs, right? And then you can see that Grafana, you can give it a title. So we'll say coin API CPU usage. You can change the metric here. You can make it, 4 different things. You can actually get really creative with how you visualize this data, but I'll just start with this for now. Yeah, everything looks good. I'll remove the threshold. Apply. So there you go. There's our first dashboard. Let's go ahead and add a new panel. So go here, you can see this is the default view, it's just random. I'm going to go ahead and change the data source again to Prometheus. And then let's do container memory usage bytes. And we'll say name is coin API. So there you go, now you can see the coin API's memory usage. And it's in bytes. Now what's really cool over here is you can go down here and try to find the section on units. You can see it's on, you can change the units here to bytes. So yeah, there it is. And I can see the memory usage and the y-axis has changed. I'll just say memory usage. Nice, this is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and apply this. Memory usage, I called it coin API at the beginning, so why don't I just change it to say that. Coin API, apply, very cool, very cool. Now let's change it to go like the last 30 minutes. So yeah, this is the usage over time. Now let's see if anything changes if I make another 100 million requests. And keep in mind that this is scraping every 5 seconds, so something should change. Yeah, you can see the memory spiked and the CPU usage spiked because of that huge query I did. It's honestly really cool to see this. Before we move on to custom metrics, one thing I'm going to do is make use of the default dashboard functionality. So you can start by you can go to dashboard settings, you can go to JSON model. Just copy this whole thing, so Control-A, Control-C, and go back to this directory, dashboards. You can make a file called dashboard.json. Paste what you got from Grafana. Okay, now once you've pasted the dashboard, I made some space. I closed the left side. I closed the terminal. Go to grafana.ini and let's go ahead and add something under dashboards, which is default home dashboard path, and that is going to be pretty much it's at etc Grafana dashboard provisioning dashboards, and then the file that we did, which was dashboard.json. So your Grafana ini should now look like this. You added this new thing, which somewhat matches the path, right? Grafana provisioning dashboards dashboard.json, and inside of your Docker compose file, you mounted that volume here. So let's stop everything, and then let's rerun it. Specify the build flag just to make sure that it all runs. Coin API has been recreated. Grafana has been recreated. cAdvisor is going. Go back here. Refresh. Yeah, so you go home, and if you go home, you can see that we got the dashboard here loaded by default. So if I refresh the page, you can see it just pops up no matter what. I close it, I reopen it, the dashboard pops up, which is awesome. So any subsequent changes to the dashboard, you'll have to go into settings, JSON model, copy and paste everything here and then rerun. But yeah, you can see it works.